and welcome to the Disability Education in Society podcast. This is a podcast for collective learning and unlearning in the struggle for intersectional liberation. We focus on educational realms, expanding to other societal areas. We share our stories as academics as well as those of our featured guests, including disability activists involved with multifaceted dimensions of systems equity, self-determination efforts, anti-ableist, and anti-racist liberation. Join us as co-conspirators.
Well, welcome everybody. Alexis and I are really excited for a new set of recordings that we had in the last few months. I know it's been a while since we posted any new episodes. I think it's been since May of last year, and a lot has happened since May. And so we just wanted to touch base with you and just let you know. So, Alexis, what's been going on with you since May of 2024?
Well, it's been a pretty intense writing time for me. I think I've been trying to keep up with the number of chapters and articles. Um, and I think I'm not exaggerating. It's been about nine articles and chapters that I've completed or I'm about to complete in the period since May. What I'm happiest about is the fact that I think more than 60% of those articles and chapters are collaborations, some new collaborations with folks from um, Latin America who are studying and doing their careers here in the United States, also with a disabled scholar at a university in the West Coast, and a couple of things that Paulo and I have been doing. So it's been quite intense for me. And I'm also advancing with my book. That I think we actually mentioned something to the audience about my book in our last podcast.
Yeah, we
How
did.
about you, Paulo? I mean, you actually switched institutions since May. What else has happened?
I did. And so, yeah, that's exciting news about your book because we did have a conversation about that. So that is coming into fruition for Alexis. And also, Alexis, you mentioned some of the writings, and just this past day, I think one of the many articles and chapters you talked about there is a book chapter that Alexis did quite a bit with, and we just submitted that for review. And that is, yeah, it's a really powerful piece that some of them ideas from that chapter Alexis and I have been working on for many years. Uh, and in this case, one of the articles was actually rejected by several journals. And so we are using this rejected article for a really nice book chapter that is going to be coming out soon. So we'll let you know more about that. So yeah, that was definitely a really um, big piece. It was, I think we registered at 13,000 words, which is about 40, 50 double space pages. Yeah, so as Alexa mentioned, one of these writings is some of them, yeah, could be quite, quite involved. And to hear Alexis, you sharing how much you've been doing, that's just for me, I'm like, I don't know how you do it. It's just quite a bit. It's the world of academics, I suppose. This is some things that some people are doing regularly.
Yeah, and I think this is, in a way, sort of my form of activism. There is so much going on in the world of Latinx folks that is quite intense, and just watching the news is becoming quite painful. Just to observe the recalcitrant type of oppression that people in real life context are experiencing. It's really getting to the point of persecution. Um, People uh, who go to pick up their kids in Chicago, and all of a sudden they get ICE ready to get them, so they have to organize, and other people who are not the parents go to pick up kids. All sort of resistance mechanisms that have to be developed creatively to fight all that stuff. So I think writing, for me at least, becomes a way of trying to channel some of the energy and some of the frustration of seeing here in the US a lot of the things that you try to escape from in diasporic um, movements when you come from Latin America or other parts of the world. So, but I wanted to mention, Paulo, maybe we should develop a podcast about rejected pieces.
Hmm.
When I looked back at some of these writing that we had done in the past, which got rejected, I could see how how we have matured in the process, and at the same time, how those rejections give you an opportunity to do a sort of dialectical engagement with your own creativity, with your own sense of the world. And I think we see some of these things differently. Some of them we have um, rooted even better, some of the concepts. What do you think about that possibility? Maybe talk about rejected pieces and the catalyst power that they can have um, for deeper and sometimes even different types of writings that people can develop and ideas for activism and things like that.
Sure, I think that's a great idea. And just to go back a little bit, what you said earlier about ICE, and we were recording this a few months, not a few weeks. It feels like months, maybe years since the new administration here in the US took over. This is 2025. We're in February. So yeah, not even a month, but yeah, feels like a long time. So Alexis mentioned ICE. And ICE is acronym here in the US for the US Immigration and Custom Enforcement, and they are notorious for doing a lot of very mean, dehumanizing things to people, separating families, going to workplaces, going homes, and just taking people, putting them in cages, and the sort. So, yeah, I just wanted to another acronym. I'm always on the lookout for acronyms, Alexis. So,
Yeah, this is a symbolic one because ice means yellow in Spanish. So for the people who think of the icy nature of
mm,
cold bureaucratic institutions set up to repress, and um, it's just very interesting. They're now sending people also to Guantanamo. That's the newest
mm,
way of caging them. And one thing that the news in Spanish was reporting last week was how um, a lot of the portable people were working in preparation for the Super Bowl. The Super Bowl here in the US is sort of this huge sports thing. It's probably the biggest sports thing, bigger than the World Series in baseball or any other sports. Um, and they were not being picked up by ICE. So there is sort of this convenience of course, sowing fear, but letting some work being done by these immigrants because they are the only ones doing the work. And it reminded me of an article I read um, in the late 90s that said, La migra never comes in harvest. This idea that ICE has these selective moments for them to do this stuff so that they can keep up exploiting
Mm,
the work of people. And it's so fascinating how um, these things are quote unquote allowed with the certainty that nobody else is going to be doing the work, and things are going to flow in a timely manner because of the enslavement of a lot of these
mm.
populations. So it's quite interesting.
Yeah, yeah. So I
And also, we're also engaged in co-writing a chapter with one of the persons that will be coming up in one of the episodes, Mercedes, and um, it that chapter got rejected for other reasons. It looks like they got too many chapters, and we are thinking about what to do with that particular because it's not written yet. It's sort of a proposal for some ideas, and it's an interesting thing because there we are centering on anti-Black things that happen in schools, but looking at the alliance building with Asian American and Latinx connection. So I'm really looking forward to that intersectional engagement, Paulo, for readers. And I guess we'll let people know when that chapter is written and is coming out, probably as an article instead of a chapter, if we decide on putting out that as a journal article is instead of um, trying it as a book chapter. But I find that pretty exciting because I think in these moments of anti-Asian sentiments with all the conversation about tariffs and the tension that has been created, it also tends to impact um, a lot of um, Asian populations in schooling contexts, and also um, the typical anti-Black sentiments that are brewing and are fed by
mm,
some of the tension. So I feel that the best antidote to all of this is unity and cross-coalitional connections that can really ground us in positive energy, despite every effort to get us depressed and unfruitful in many ways, right?
I feel like, something that hasn't been um, maybe talked too much about in the public conversation is last time this president was in office that we had a lot of anti-Asian issues that were happening, harms that took place, and I think that this time around there's a good understanding that this is much worse overall for everybody. And I think that is something to be, I think a lot of people are very concerned about. Yeah, this whole idea about, you start with tariffs, you start with this underlying hate, this dog whistling that's happening. And yeah, I think we are in very it's not unprecedented. It's happened before, and so this, yeah, in our country, and it's kind of, we're coming back to that. We're coming back to the things like the Chinese Exclusion Act. I mean, that happened, and we thought we would never go back to something like that. Think about these concentration camps that we had here in the U.S. After the attack on Pearl Harbor, and so with the internment camps, the Japanese internment camps in the U.S. I mean, so these things all happened before, and again, the climate for me is very concerning in that these things could not only repeat, but it could be worse. I mean, we're talking about destruction of our world. If we're going up against with our U.S. empire coming down, and with the ascent of China, and I think not people not wanting to for that to happen, and doing everything possible not to have that happen. And Again, just blaming all of the ills on others and other races and countries. I think those are things that to be very concerned about.
Yeah,
I
I'm thinking of the dialectical nature of these because a lot of people say, "Oh, history is repeating itself." History cannot repeat itself because, let's say the Chinese Exclusion Act, it happened in 1890, and the war against Mexico, takeover of Mexican territory happened earlier than that in the 19th century. But now we have nuclear weapons. Both China and the US have them. We have many things that are different. And essentially, the um, uh, checks and balances are being dismantled um, as we speak. So, undoing the governmental protections that have been gained over the 20th and 21st century, um, plus the unleashing of people who had been convicted of crimes like the what happened in the Capitol and let them be essentially. It's not just that you have governmental repression, you have a lot of people outside who can do a lot of damage without any controls because then the agencies that were supposed to control them are no longer there. I mean, you're brewing something that it looks like a repetition of history, but it's a much worse cocktail of components and things that are definitely being co-constructed in a very deliberate fashion. So it's a very interesting moment for us to cultivate unity and cross-coalitional ways to be
yeah.
alert against what's going on, right?
Yeah, and to go off what you said is, yeah, the importance of cross-coalitional work. With our podcast here, we center disability, and so that is so important. And I think, as you mentioned, history doesn't repeat itself. It's a different context. And I think in some ways, the people and the movements they create are maybe the constant in a way that when these things happen, people rise up, they collectivize, and they fight back. And I think that part of this podcast is that. I mean, we are talking about a really important and critical moments, and to think about going back to what you said earlier, your work as an activist and writing, and we all do the things that we can in our ways to push back, to resist, to yeah, this is the time. And so we know that's going to happen. And we know that we're not going to take this new administration, this new sort of repressive state, authoritarian state that we're headed towards. We're not going to take it. We are going to, yeah, the backlash is coming. And so we can do our part in cultivating that.
Yeah, and I
Yeah,
think each of us has something to contribute that's unique in the little corners of what we um, have for agency's sake. And I think um, it's important to just know that we're not isolated as those things are happening. They seem too small, too insignificant, but they add up. And the adding up is, I think, what we have to um, keep envisioning as a crucial thing. As we are talking, we're conversing a week before what they call here in the U.S. President's Day, which I think commemorates George Washington's um, birthday. Um, and it's interesting for all the issues with the American Empire. When you think of a figure like Washington, um, you can agree that he was offered several times to become a dictator, and he refused to do that. He gave up all his military glory and became a regular citizen. Um, so I think in terms of models and things to look at as part of the essence of what the United States has been in its efforts to be a democracy, I think those symbolic things are um, quite important. I'm thinking of Venezuelan main hero, Bolivar, who was a great fighter against the Spanish Empire. But when he became the one in power, he did accept the title as dictator and had sort of this dance with power, uh, which I think ended up planting a seed for a lot of authoritarian things in Latin America. So I think it's important to, yes, even though history doesn't repeat itself, to at least look at some of these models in the past that could give us some light in the present against authoritarian, non-democratic types of approaches. And I think, I don't know, it's a good moment for us, Paulo, to be conversing with folks and touching base, and so they know that we're still alive and kicking, and we're still doing some things that hopefully will keep connecting with them. Are folks in the audience, are they able to send us comments, thoughts, ideas, recommendations? Do you have ways for that to happen, Bella?
That might happen. Right now, we don't have a mechanism for that, but I think part of the break in our episode was, as you mentioned, I was transitioning to a new institution. So in the fall, I started a new position at the University of California, Santa Cruz, and it's been a lot as far as transition goes. As many of you know, learning in a new system, teaching new courses, moving in some ways to a new environment. All that takes a lot, and part of the podcast break was that we didn't have student support. So a lot of the technical aspect, as you mentioned there, Alexis, is things that we have students do because they know a lot more than the both of us combined know, and they could do it so much faster as well. So I had quite a bit of help in my previous institution, and so the students, these are undergraduate students who are paid to support faculty, and so I'm just getting to having a student support, and so that's why we are able to start posting we've been recording in the last few months, but we just haven't posted them. So help is coming for us as far as student, and yeah, that is something else that we can investigate to see what are the possible mechanisms for having folks connect with us, like with comments and such. So, yeah, we maybe we can in the future see how that will happen in the near future. So,
Yeah,
yeah,
I'm thinking
it's been
my wishful thinking is that we could probably have maybe once a month, every 6 weeks, um, um, a session like this where we actually cluster comments and things, and we start responding to people or dialoguing with folks that have sent us ideas or thoughts and critiques,
mm,
whatever. So that might be a good conversational moment that
yeah.
could be.
Alexis and I were both experienced in the olden days, I suppose, when we had those radio folks who received mail, and the audience question or they would just mail people questions and have some of the very popular radio shows may have like bags of mails, and they would just go through them, open them, read them on air, if you will. So probably not going to do that, but there will be something much faster that we can have. a little bit more engagement.
Yeah, and we could actually find some mechanism for people to leave us um, some sort of voicemail things, and we could hear some of the voices of folks, not just text stuff, but also voices. Maybe they could send us poems and
Oh,
um, articulate things with videos or things of that sort that are more of the current epoch instead of just textual handwritten notes that that the mail regular mail brings to our doors and that kind of thing. So,
yeah, the NPR does something like that, right? Like National Public Radio here in the US, they have these folks who call in, I think, and they recorded. I think it's called 1A is the name of the show, and people call in and have like a few seconds, and so during the show you'll hear voices from different people weighing in on the issues at hand. So yeah, that reminded me of that particular show, which is yeah, it's still going on. So yeah, lots of things that might be coming up. I know for you, Alexis and I, we still are having a lot going on. So we'll try to get some episodes here and there, and just trying to keep connected. Now that things have settled down for me. Again, that doesn't mean we don't have less to do, but I think we can kind of get things going again with the podcasts, and yeah, it's keep having these very important conversations about disability education and society.
wonderful. Thanks, Paulo, for this space for us to reconnect with the audience and let them know of our as and about the podcast as an entity, as a living animal that's still alive and kicking like we are, and still evolving towards things that are hopefully going to be better.
All right, thank you, Alexis.